everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with all of you my recommendations for the upcoming Sephora VIB sale. So this is Sephora's biggest biannual sale, and it'll start on November 5th with Rouge members getting 20% off their entire purchase. And then starting on November 9th, VIB members will get 15% off. And then starting on November 11th, insiders will get 10% off. So anyone can join the insider program for free, so everyone automatically gets 10% off. And then if you've spent $350 in the past year at Sephora, you'll get VIB status and 15% off. And if you've spent $1,000 or more, you get Rouge status. And you can change status during the sale. So let's say if you haven't spent $350 yet at Sephora this year, but you go in during the sale, buy a bunch of stuff and reach that $350 mark, then anything you buy after that will have the 15% discount. So given how much makeup that I buy for this channel, I am in the Rouge status. So I am super excited for this sale, and I have a ton of items in my wish list. I'll actually be doing a separate video just focusing on that, but I didn't want the video to get too long, and so today I'm just gonna focus on my recommendations of products that you should check out during the VIB sale. So I'm gonna break this up by brand because depending on the brand, the VIB sale might be a good idea or might not, because certain brands have a lot of great sales on their own sites. So as I walk through the products, I'll also talk about alternative sales that you might wanna check out. So without further ado, let's get into these products. So I had to start the brand breakdown with Pat McGrath, which is my favorite beauty brand, but not necessarily actually the brand I would recommend for the Sephora VIB sale. So on Pat McGrath's website, she actually frequently has 25% off or 30% off sales. So especially if you are not a Rouge member, I would recommend, if possible, waiting to get products from Pat McGrath's website instead of from Sephora. That said, she doesn't usually put her new releases on sale, so if you're looking to pick something up that's a new release for the holiday season, then the Sephora VIB sale is a good place to pick it up. So in particular, I would recommend checking out her Celestial Odyssey collection. I have really been loving this Celestial Odyssey palette. It has 18 gorgeous shades, so many different fun looks to play around with, and it's actually what I have on my eyes today. So I went in with this pink matte, deepened it up with this brown over here, and then just put Citrine Envy all over the lids. So this was a super easy look to put together, but I think it's really fun and super appropriate for the holiday season. I think this palette at $78 is an excellent starter palette for Pat McGrath if you don't already have a lot of her shadows but have been wanting to try her formula. This is also really great though if you are a Pat McGrath collector and love having a lot more shades from her. This palette really has you covered both in terms of really neutral everyday looks and also some really fun looks with pops of color. Overall, this palette does run warm though, so if you do not like warm eyeshadows, then maybe steer clear. I would also recommend these little blush and glow trios that she's released. These come with 2 blushes and 1 highlighter, and so I picked up the Amber Allure one, which is the deeper one, and I really enjoy having all of these together for a much more affordable price than buying the full sizes individually. Her blushes individually run around $38, whereas this entire trio is only $52. I should mention that with this palette, and really actually all of the products I'm talking about today, I do have a dedicated video for each of these on my channel, and so I'll include links in the description box below in case you want to see how these swatch and how these perform. In addition to this Amber Allure trio, I also highly recommend the lighter one, Galactic Sun. I have the 2 blushes in that already in the full size, which is why I didn't pick that up, but I love those 2 blushes so much. They're among my favorite blushes of all time. So I would highly recommend that trio, and so far I've also really been enjoying this trio. For today's look, I actually have this blush over here layered over Divine Rose, which I'll show you guys shortly. And then I have this highlight all over the cheeks and also in the inner corner and brow bone. So the other major Pat McGrath recent release that is probably not going to be on sale on her website anytime soon is Utopian Dream. This is a super fun, playful, anime-inspired palette. In terms of color story, this is definitely Divine Rose 3. It's very similar to Divine Rose 1 and 2. Compared with her other motherships, I would say she definitely changed the formulation of her special shades here at the end. These three are much more glittery and flaky than typical, so these perform a lot better with either a finger or mixing liquid. And then this multi-chrome is really metallic and really pigmented, much more so than Sextraterrestrial in Divine Rose 2. So I wouldn't recommend this if you want a really simple everyday color story. I think either Divine Rose 1 or 2 would be better for that, depending on if you like warmer tones or cooler tones. But this is much more of a fun, playful palette with a lot of special effects. And I think as we enter the holiday season, I'll definitely be dipping into this palette more. So those very recent releases are definitely the ones I would prioritize from Pat McGrath in this upcoming sale. But just in case some of you don't want to wait around until Pat McGrath has a sale, I did just want to quickly mention some of my other favorites from the brand, even though I do think these will probably go on sale on her website soon. So first off, we have the full-size Divine Blushes. So if you don't want to buy that palette, you just want to pick up 1 or 2 shades, then the full-size blushes are definitely worth the price in my opinion. And today I have this shade, Divine Rose, underneath Love Struck. This is one of my favorite matte, demi-matte blush formulas. It has a really beautiful, healthy sheen on the skin. And this particular shade is really nice in terms of how buildable it is. You don't have to worry about blendability or having too much pigment on your face. I find this one extremely user-friendly. I also really love her shimmer blush formula, and if you guys watched my blush rankings video, you know that her formula comes at the top of my list of blush formulas. So here I have Desert Orchid and Nude Venus. Desert Orchid in particular is my current overall favorite blush. And so if you are looking to just pick up one of her blushes and you have similar tastes to me, you like sort of bronzy, rosy blushes that can be worn pretty much with any sort of eyeshadow look, then I would highly recommend checking out this shade. Another Pat McGrath product I really love is her Divine Rose highlighter. I would say this is actually my most natural looking everyday highlight. The texture of this highlight just makes it such that it's pretty much impossible to put too much on. You can build and build and it'll just get glowier, but it won't ever look like you have a lot of highlight on. It'll never look unnatural. And I really love that because even though sometimes I really want to be able to see my highlight clearly, other times I prefer to just have that sort of lit from within glow such that you can't necessarily tell that I'm wearing highlighter, but you can tell that my face is really glowy. And I feel like this highlight definitely gives that to you. I will say though that this is on the warm golden side of things. So especially if you're very fair, this might leave a cast on your skin. And in general, if you don't like warm highlights, this might be a pass. But definitely keep an eye out for any highlighters in this formula because this is a really amazing formula if you like a natural highlight. Finally, we have the Pat McGrath Concealer, which is also what I have on today under my eyes and then just in some of my problem areas. I have the shade LM10, and this is my favorite concealer on days when I'm doing a full glam look and I want something that's pretty high coverage but doesn't feel thick on the face. This product is pretty amazing because it lays down so pigmented, but once you blend it out, it doesn't look cakey at all on the skin, and a little really goes a long way, so you don't really feel like you have a lot of product on your skin. My only caveat with this product though is if you have pretty dry skin like myself, avoid powdering on top of this because this really sets down by itself. Of course, if you have oily skin, you probably still want to add powder on this. But if you're in the normal to dry zone, try it out without powder first, just because it can be a little bit drying if you add powder on top. So I'm not going to talk about other Pat McGrath Mothership palettes in this video because I have an entirely separate video just ranking my Pat McGrath eyeshadow palettes. So if you're interested in any of the motherships, then definitely check out that video because I run through all of them. Other than Utopian Dream, I think the rest of them will probably go on sale for 25 or 30% off sometime this holiday season. But if you want to get them during the sale, then definitely check out that video for my thoughts and ranking of each of the palettes. So moving right along, let's now go into Natasha Denona, one of my other favorite brands. And the first product I want to talk about is the Natasha Denona Bronze Palette. So in general with this video, I'm trying to avoid bringing up too many products that I talked about for the spring VIB sale because those are all products I would still recommend. And if you're interested, definitely check out that video for more recommendations. I don't want this to become too redundant to that one, but I still had to mention this palette. So this is a palette that's been continually surprising me in terms of just how much I love it and use it. So when I first got this palette, I was really excited, but I kind of assumed that I wouldn't use it that often because I don't go for just everyday bronzy looks all that often. I do like to have a pop of color or just play around with different color stories when it comes to my eyeshadow looks. And so I assumed I would do a couple looks with this palette, enjoy it, and then probably not use it that often. But despite the fact that this palette has a pretty monochromatic color story overall, I find myself digging into this so often. Basically, some of my favorite looks from this entire year were created using this palette. And oftentimes when I'm not filming but just want to feel a little bit glam and play around with makeup, this is the palette that I open. And so I wanted to bring this up again just because even though I mentioned it in the spring, I have since fallen in love with this palette even more. Next up, we have the Natasha Denona Circo Loco palette and Trio Chrome palette. Circo Loco has a very saturated color story. I feel like it always looks really ugly in pictures and on camera because the color saturation and contrast is just too much for my camera to handle. And Trio Chrome is a mostly pastel matte palette with 3 dual chromes in the center. So I bought these two in a bundle together, so I ended up getting like 40% off on the total. And so I recommend these palettes, but with a caveat that I don't know if these are necessarily worth the full price, minus 10 to 20%. They are really pricey palettes. But that said, I do really like these palettes, and so if these palettes speak to you and you don't want to buy 2 of them together, then the Sephora VIB sale is a good time to look into them. In particular, these palettes are great if you're someone who is kind of bored with most of the eyeshadow palettes you're seeing on the market. Maybe you have a really big collection, or maybe you just like really colorful looks. The 3 dual chromes in Trio Chrome, these 3 down here, are a little bit lackluster in terms of not having very intense shifts, but the rest of the shades in this palette, all of these pastel mattes, are so beautiful and unique to my collection. I feel like I haven't really seen other brands choose these particular types of shades. In general, it's pretty hard to find good quality pastel mattes. And I think Natasha Denona did a really great job of picking these specific shades. There's a slight grungy aspect to each of these while still being really bright and spring-like. So I think this palette has a lot of versatility in terms of what season you use it for and what kind of vibe you want for your look. Circo Loco, as I mentioned, does not look the best on camera, but is actually really beautiful in person. The quality of these shadows is really exceptional, and even though the color story looks kind of crazy and hard to work with, if you like orange looks, blue looks, purple looks, or pink looks, this palette really has you covered and you don't have to do all of those looks simultaneously. I think this palette actually in practice does a really great job of having a lot of shades you probably don't have elsewhere in your collection, while also still being quite approachable once you break the shades down. And so if you're looking for a palette that will encourage you to play around with color and create a lot of fun looks, then I think that Circo Loco is a great way to go. Finally, we have the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude lip liner in the shade Naya. So this has basically been my most used lip liner of the year. As someone with a medium skin tone, I find that it's really difficult sometimes to find the right lip liner to pair with lighter lipsticks. And I find that this tone is just so perfect for deepening up any really light lipstick while also having a lot of versatility. The shade works well both for warm-toned and for cool-toned lipsticks. The formulation is just so creamy, does not tug at all on your lips, And also, of all the lip liner formulas I've tried, including from Pat McGrath, Lisa Eldridge, Charlotte Tilbury, I would say that this one is definitely the longest lasting. This does not budge after you put it on, which can be a little bit of a problem if you want to take it off super easily. But if you're looking for a very long wearing creamy lip liner, then I would highly recommend this formula. And the shade Naya is especially one I would recommend looking into if you have a medium to tan skin tone and have been looking for something to deepen up really light lipsticks. So the next brand I want to talk about is Charlotte Tilbury. So one of my surprise favorite finds for the year is the Star Aura palette. And I say surprise because if you guys watch my original video reviewing this palette, I was honestly pretty underwhelmed in that this palette is pretty light. It doesn't offer much depth at all on my skin tone. And so when I first used this palette, I thought, okay, that's like a pretty look, but not that different from what I can get elsewhere, and not something that shows up a ton on my skin tone. Since then though, this has become my go-to palette on an everyday basis if I'm just going to work and want to just look a little bit more awake and alive and defined in my eye area, but don't really want to go for an actual glam look. I think this palette does a great job of straddling, having some light and sparkle to your eyes, but not in a way that makes it look like you have glittery eyes. I now think that the fact that it looks pretty natural is actually a really good thing. And also all of these shadows are in her Baked Gelée formula, which is particularly luxurious. And when you use this formula, there are no issues of patchiness whatsoever. So this is just such a simple, easy palette to use on an everyday basis that it's definitely become one of my most used palettes of the year. Next up, we have the Charlotte Tilbury Instant Look of Love in a palette in the color story Glowing Beauty. And if you are just going to buy one Charlotte Tilbury product, I would say that this one is a great one to start out with. Either this color story or the lighter one if you have a lighter skin tone than me. I love how with this palette you can create an entire look. You have everything you need. These three eyeshadows at the top, this bronzer, a blush, highlight, and powder. In particular though, I love this palette for this powder and this bronzer. This face powder single-handedly started my recent interest in face powders because prior to trying this, I didn't really know what all the hype was. I personally have dry skin, and so I just thought, okay, well, I don't really need powder then. But this product does such an excellent job of just blurring your skin, sealing all of your makeup in without looking cakey or unnatural. It has a really beautiful finish while really having staying power. It is pretty mattifying though, so if you want a glowier look, then I would recommend some other powders for you. But if you're okay with a mostly matte finish, then this is an excellent powder to try out. And of course, she sells this separately as well. This bronzer shade though is one that she does not sell separately outside of this palette, and I really hope she does someday because I really love this shade over here. Her Airbrush Flawless Powder in general is one of my favorite bronzers, but I always find that those are a little bit warm for my preferences, so they tend to run a little bit orange. This shade though has more of a reddish undertone to it, so it comes across as more neutral on my skin tone. And so I really like this. It's possibly my favorite bronzer at the moment, which is saying a lot. Next, we have lip products from Charlotte, and I won't go into too much depth about these because I actually just filmed a video swatching my entire Charlotte Tilbury lip collection, but just to quickly run through the formulations. First off, I would say a surprise favorite for me this year was her Happy Kiss formula, and particularly the shade Passion Kiss. So as you can see here, the packaging for this product definitely leaves something to be desired. This white component here especially looks really cheap. The entire packaging is very light in general. And so this product is definitely not one to buy for the packaging, but the formula is amazing. This is one of my favorite lip formulas at the moment. It is so incredibly pigmented and nourishing, and yet it does not budge from your lips. And so I have been really impressed with this formula, and I use this product so often on an everyday basis. For me, this is a great, just slightly deeper nude shade on my lips. So despite the packaging, I would highly recommend looking into this formula. One of my other favorite lipstick formulas is her kissing formula. So this is the satin formulation that she has, and it's an incredibly comfortable formula on the lips. One of my favorite shades is Nude Romance, which comes in this gorgeous packaging. Nude Romance is a really excellent everyday nude for me. Definitely more nude and neutral in comparison to the Happy Kiss that I just showed you. So this is also really great on days when I have a lot going on my eyes and I don't want my lips to steal the show. In addition to having an incredibly comfortable formula, she has a pretty good shade range with this, at least much bigger than the Happy Kiss range. And so a lot of her nude lipsticks and a lot of her lighter lipsticks are in this kissing formula. The only thing I don't like about this formula is it does have a little bit of a tendency to go slipping and sliding around your face, and it does often get on my teeth. So just something to be aware of with this. You might want to check yourself in the mirror a little bit more if you're wearing this formula. And then last, of course, we have her Matte Revolution formula, and this has definitely been my favorite matte formula of the year. I also like Lisa Eldridge and Pat McGrath, but this is one of the few that I actually feel like wearing even on days when I'm not specifically looking for a matte look. So I still need to wear lip balm underneath this, but I find that if I layer this on top of lip balm, it doesn't have the problem of really emphasizing the lines in my lips, and that always happens with other matte lipsticks. So if you have that problem, I would definitely recommend looking into her Matte Revolution formula. Just make sure you wear some lip balm underneath. And in particular, recently I've really been liking Mrs. Kisses, which is just a really pretty warm pink shade. So Pat McGrath, Natasha Denona, and Charlotte Tilbury are definitely the brands that I follow the most and have the most products from. So for the remaining brands, I just have a couple products here or there that I would highly recommend. Starting off with these cream lipsticks from Huda Beauty. So these really surprised me. I picked up my first shade of these, Moneymaker, kind of on a lark because I was searching for a good nude lipstick for medium skin tones and was having a really hard time finding one. And so I watched Miriam Maquillage's swatch video where she swatched all of these shades, and Moneymaker looked pretty good to me, so I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And I have really fallen in love with this lipstick. This is possibly my #1 lipstick find of the entire year. The formula of this lipstick is just so hydrating and comfortable on the lips. It kind of reminds me of the Happy Kiss formula in that it's almost balmy in texture, even though this is definitely a lipstick rather than a lip balm. It also really sticks to your lips, so again, no problem of it migrating on your teeth or all over your face. And as it's wearing down, even just a thin layer of this provides a really beautiful flush to the lips. So I have become a huge fan of this formula, and for me, I always find it really hard to get nude lipsticks that don't look kind of grayish on me. So these two are some of the very few that I found so far that are actually really flattering on my skin and make me look more alive instead of corpse-like. Next, we have the Huda Beauty Balm Brows Eyebrow Pencil. So as you can see here, this eyebrow pencil draws really fine strokes. And so I've really enjoyed using this to line the outside of my brows and just give it a nice defined shape. It's funny, when I first tried this brow pencil, I wasn't a huge fan because I thought that I could use this to really draw the strokes in the inner portions of my brows. And it can do that. It's not bad at that, but I feel like where it really excels is more so drawing the overall shape of your brows. And so this went from just being a kind of okay brow pencil to now being my favorite brow pencil. And so I'll actually be picking up another one of these in the VIB sale. I would say the only thing I don't like about this pencil is because the product is so thin, you don't actually get a lot of product in this tube. And so I feel like I ran through this brow pencil pretty fast. So this is definitely one I would recommend getting on sale. Next up, we have Patrick Ta, specifically his Monochrome Moment Velvet Blush formulas. So I featured the shade She's Passionate in my spring VIB video, but since then I have actually picked up 2 additional shades. So I now have 3 out of the 4 shades in this blush collection, which is a lot for me. I usually don't pick up anywhere near the entire collection of any given blush, but I have just been so in love with this formula. If you guys watched my blush rankings video, you know that this is my #1 matte blush formula. When you first pick this up, it doesn't seem like it would be super great. It doesn't swatch really well. The formula looks kind of powdery. But once you get it on the skin, it is just so pretty. It is really great at blurring, and even though the formula upon swatch feels a little bit powdery and a little bit dry, it doesn't look drying at all on the cheeks. It still has a little bit of a satin finish, so it isn't totally flat matte, but it also doesn't highlight any texture. I also really enjoy the shades. So here we have She's Passionate, which is a nice pink matte shade. She's Seductive, which is a bit more of a plummy nude, and so I love this on days when I have a cooler toned look. And then She's Adorable, which is more of a peach shade, and this one actually has some shimmer, so it's not really a matte blush. But all of these are really beautiful on the cheeks, really easy to blend out, no issues with patchiness whatsoever. So if you haven't tried out his blush formula, I would definitely recommend looking into this. I will say I don't know if this is the same as in his blush duos. There he has 1 powder and 1 cream, but for now I'm vouching for the individual powder blushes. So the last brand I wanted to talk briefly about is Viseart. So I have yet to pick up any of the Viseart Étendue palettes. I previously was really obsessed with their Edit palettes and their Petit Pro palettes, so I have most of those palettes in my collection. But for the past 6 months, I found myself actually primarily gravitating to these 2 larger palettes that I have from them. So here is the Viseart Neutral Mattes palette, and here is the Sultry Muse palette. So these are not necessarily palettes I would recommend to everyone, but these are excellent palettes if you are someone who mostly just does everyday neutral looks. The formulas in these palettes are impeccable. In particular, Viseart is really known for their matte formula, but also their shimmer formula is really great for everyday looks. So if you're mainly looking for makeup to say wear to work, or if you really like very natural looks, then these are 2 really great palettes to look into. Of course, both of these are $80, which is quite pricey. So if I had to pick one, I would say the neutral mattes is maybe the way to go, just because the Viseart matte formula is so famous. But if you want a complete look, buying these 2 together is a great way to go. The only caveat I would say is if you're not in a hurry to pick these up, maybe wait for the Muse Beauty Pro sale, because they often have buy 1 get 1 sales where you can get 2 Viseart palettes bundled at a significant discount with some freebies. So the Sephora VIB sale is not necessarily the best place to pick these up. So that's it for my recommendations for the Sephora VIB sale. Hopefully this is helpful for any of you who have been eyeing the sale. And also, as I mentioned at the top, the Sephora VIB sale might not be the best sale at which to get these items. So if you're interested in them, also do a search before you check out at Sephora to see if they might be discounted elsewhere. Especially the brand websites themselves often have the steepest discounts. I would love to hear down below what you guys are eyeing for the upcoming sales, and as I mentioned, I'll also be sharing my wish list in a later video. So if you're interested in that, please let me know in the comments below, and also subscribe to stay tuned. So thank you all so much for joining me today, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!